The early morning flight from Dallas to Seattle buzzed with the buzz of chatter and the sound of suitcase wheels rolling down the aisle. In seat 12F at the back of the plane sat Jack Turner, a man who bore the weight of life more heavily than most. His 7-year-old daughter, Emma, dozed against him, her messy curls spilling across his shoulder and her faded pink backpack held tight in her small grasp. To those around him, he was just another face in the crowd. His clothes were clean but unremarkable, and his shoes showed signs of wear after long days at the mechanic's shop. The woman next to him didn't so much as glance his way, lost in her own world on her phone. A businessman in front of him audibly huffed when Jack took a moment longer to hoist his duffel bag into the overhead compartment. Polite smiles from the flight attendants were all he received, no one seemed to notice him beyond that. This didn't bother Jack. He was accustomed to the feeling of being overlooked. What did weigh on him was the empty seat across the aisle, a stark reminder of where his wife used to sit on their flights together. She had passed away 3 years ago in a tragic car accident, leaving him alone to care for Emma. This trip was intended to mark a fresh beginning, a chance to visit his sister in Washington, who had offered him a stable job at her garage now that he had finally saved enough for the journey. As the captain's voice broke through the cabin's noise, Jack tuned it out, having heard the standard announcements countless times before: cruising altitude, weather updates, and estimated arrival. He closed his eyes for a moment in an attempt to relax. However, the captain's voice returned, this time with a tone that piqued his interest. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be flying through an active military training zone today. You may spot a couple of F-22s escorting us for a short while. It's all routine, nothing to worry about." A faint smile crossed Jack's face. It had been years since he had last seen those planes, not since his time in the Air Force. Emma stirred beside him, whispering, "Daddy, are those the fast planes you used to fly?" He chuckled softly. "Not quite, sweetheart. I worked on them. Fixed them up and made sure they flew." The flight attendant, who had caught their conversation, nodded politely. "Oh, you served?" "Yes, ma'am. Crew chief with the 27th Fighter Squadron. My call sign was Ghost." Her eyes widened in recognition. "Ghost? I've heard that name before." Jack let out a quiet laugh. "You probably remember some of the more impressive ones." Her thoughtful expression lingered as she moved on. A few moments later, as the plane leveled off, the attendant returned, now accompanied by a striking woman he had not noticed before. She was tall, poised, dressed in a dark suit with an Air Force pin adorning her lapel. She exchanged a few words with the attendant before turning her attention to Jack. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice steady. "Are you Ghost Turner?" Jack felt a jolt of surprise. It had been nearly 10 years since anyone had called him that. "I used to be," he replied, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. "Not anymore." The woman's smile brightened. "You might want to take a look out your window." He turned to the side, and his breath hitched. 2 F-22 Raptors soared alongside the commercial jet, the sun casting brilliant reflections off their wings. He could see the pilots' helmets clearly, one of them nodding slightly in his direction, then, astonishingly, raising a gloved hand in a salute. Jack blinked in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me." Emma's eyes were wide with wonder. "Daddy, they're waving at us." The woman beside him lowered her voice slightly. "Those pilots are from Langley. They requested this route as soon as they found out you were on board." Jack turned to her in confusion. "How could they possibly know?" "Because," she said with a soft smile, "one of them was your trainee, Captain Ruiz. He said you taught him everything he knows about keeping those birds in the air." Jack returned his gaze to the window. The jet tilted its wings in a silent gesture of respect. For the briefest moment, all the worries clouding his mind, the mounting bills, the solitude, the weariness, fell away. He placed his hand on the window. More passengers were taking notice now, phones rising, and whispers floating through the aisle. A businessman leaned across. "Who are they saluting?" The flight attendant replied with a smile, "Seat 12F." When the fighters banked away minutes later, the entire cabin erupted in applause. Jack's throat tightened as Emma clapped enthusiastically, her face radiant. "They're your friends, Daddy." His voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah, sweetheart," he managed to say. "They are." The woman in the suit stayed for a moment longer. "I'm Colonel Hayes," she said softly. "I was asked to give you this." She handed him a small, folded letter. "It's from Captain Ruiz." With trembling hands, Jack unfolded the note. "Sir, I heard through the network that you've fallen on hard times. You once told me that a true pilot isn't just the one in the cockpit but the one who helps others when they can't keep flying. I've never forgotten that. You saved my career and my life. Today, we wanted to return the salute." Jack swallowed hard. "He was just a kid," he whispered. Colonel Hayes smiled. "Not anymore. He's one of our best." As the plane touched down in Seattle, a subtle shift occurred. Passengers who had previously overlooked Jack now moved aside, offering warm smiles and nods. A few even extended a handshake. The businessman who had sighed earlier helped him fetch his duffel bag, while Emma strutted alongside with her backpack, still excitedly recounting the sky salute. In the terminal, Colonel Hayes stood by the gate. "Mr. Turner," she said, "there's one more thing. We've arranged a visit for you and your daughter at McCord Air Base tomorrow. The pilots are eager to meet you." Jack was momentarily lost for words. Gratitude filled him, so immense it felt beyond expression. He finally nodded, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. That night, after tucking Emma into bed, he stood by the window of his sister's guest room, gazing at the soft glimmer of the stars. For the first time in what felt like ages, he didn't feel as though he was fading into the background. He was still a single dad, battling his own struggles, but somewhere up in the skies, men who flew faster than sound had remembered him. And for Jack Turner, that was enough to ignite a fresh start.